These are the men and women of Beaver Valley, the bravest of the brave. They fought fearlessly for their country, their city, their community, and for the ideals we share as Americans. They served proudly in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, the Gulf War, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Here now are their stories, their own experiences in their own words, the words of the heroes of Beaver Valley. When the United States entered World War II, Aliquippa native Pete Marovich joined the Marine Corps in 1942 when he was 17 years old.
Of course, my mom and dad had to sign, and they were reluctant, but I had a good recruiter, and he talked them into it.
Marovich would go to signal school to learn radios and communication. He would end up in the South Pacific with the 3rd Marine Division, with his first invasion being at Bougainville.
I guess the only hairy situation in Bougainville, we were on an island, it was Parada Island, right off of mainland Bougainville. And on that island they had all the ammunition and all the fuel. And the Japanese knew that. The Japanese came in and bombed us and strafed us, chasing us from one end of the island to the other. They finally hit that fuel dump. It was a big fire, I'll tell you that. And I lost a couple of good bodies there on that island.
The day before his 21st birthday, Marovich was on an amphibious vehicle headed towards the beaches of Guam. When the door opened, however, he found he was struggling to get out because of the weight of all the communication equipment he was carrying.
I was a strapping 136-pounder. So I couldn't get out of the amphibian tractor. The captain grabbed a hold of my ankles and threw me out. And when I landed on the beach, my rifle broke in half, broke the stock. Being confused and scared, I didn't know where I was going. But I finally made it to a foxhole and regrouped with my unit, and we carried on from there.
On Guam, Marovich would narrowly avoid being injured in a mortar attack. Unfortunately, his friends weren't as lucky.
I was standing with two of my buddies, one on my right and one on my left, and a mortar round went out, came in, and it hit my buddy on the right in the leg, and my buddy on the left, it broke his jaw. I didn't get a scratch.
When Marovich returned to the United States after the war, he finished his time in the military by guarding German prisoners in the Philadelphia Navy Yard.
They were the friendliest guys you ever met. We drove them in cattle cars to where they were working. They worked in the salvage yard. And of course I had a rising submachine gun, which I gave to the driver, and then I went and stayed in the cab, in the body of the truck with the prisoners. And then when we got to where we were going, they went to work, and we just watched them, that's all.
Marovich was only out of the military for 4 years before he re-enlisted in 1950 at the start of the Korean War.
When Korea broke out in '50, I re-enlisted. I figured I had enough of civilian life, so I went back home.
He spent 2 years as a drill sergeant at Parris Island before he went to Korea with the 1st Marine Division.
And then, of course, we went into Korea, and I got there just about the time where they were talking about setting up the armistice. And I was a machine gun platoon sergeant. We had our positions, but we never got into a real battle.
After the armistice, he was transferred to the DMZ, where he stood guard opposite of North Korean soldiers.
There was a strand of barbed wire between me and the North Korean. He was looking at me and I was looking at him, and that's about all we did. It was a hairy situation where if they'd have jumped off, we'd have never stood a chance. But it worked out fine.
Marovich would decide to make his career in the Marine Corps. He went to Vietnam with the 1st Marine Division as a sergeant major.
Wasn't very much going on because our cantonment was more to the rear than the other cantonments But we had rocket attacks, and we had sapper attacks. Sappers, that was infiltrating the lines, the Viet Cong. They were trying to get in to the compound, because that's where the general was located. I kept the battalion commander appraised of what the troopers were doing, what we needed, checking the front lines, checking the perimeter, and making sure that everything was taken care of.
After 32 years of service, Marovich retired from the Marine Corps in 1978. He often reflects on his time in the service.
Every once in a while I listen to my bugle calls and my favorite marches. It was a wonderful life, it really was. And as a result, now that I'm retired, I'm sitting pretty good.